Welcome back to MACSMIN 2026. So now Professor Alexei Lisitsa from the University of Liverpool, our School of Computer Science and Informatics, will talk about automating reasoning for knots and knotted structures, possible applications to proteins. Please, Alexei.
Well, thank you very much for organizers for this nice meeting to invite me to give a talk. Yes, so first of all, I would like to start with acknowledgement of my collaborators and colleagues with whom I developed many of the approaches you will hear today, approaches related to applications of automated reasoning, to computational topology, and in particular to knot theory. That includes Andrew Fish, University of Liverpool now, David Stanovsky from Charles University in Prague, Sarah Swartwood from University of Brighton, Alexei Lisitsa from University of Essex, and Neslihan Ugumci from Izmir Institute of Technology in Turkey. Right, so what's it all about? There is some delay in reaction. Okay, so that is an outline. So effectively, I will consider the tasks of computational topology, several different tasks, and I would describe how one may approach these tasks from using automated reasoning. So in some sense, it's an interesting, I would say, methodological viewpoint. So instead of specialized algorithms, we propose to deal with such tasks using generic tools, often referred as solvers or theorem provers or such solvers. And I will then proceed to possible applications. And for this conference, mostly looking at knotted proteins by the end of my talk. And I will describe how this might affect the whole approach, taking actual problems from computational biology. But also noticed here verification of quantum programs. It's turned out also somewhat mysteriously linked to the tasks of computational topology. And our motto here, so we would like to apply generic automated reasoning instead of specialized algorithms. Let me start with some illustrations. It's always nice to have some nice pictures. So that is a knot, mathematical object, and more precisely, it's a projection of a knot on a plane. And the question is it trivial knot? Can we actually untangle it without cutting the rope? Any opinions?
No, I think not. It's not possible. No?
Yeah, it looks like not possible, but in fact, in fact, it is possible. It's called culprit unknot, and it has very nice theoretical properties. And I will show now simplification sequence. So here is simplification sequence, and as you see, it's not entirely trivial, especially because on the way to be simplified, so not become more complex. More crossings should appear before you're actually able to simplify. So this is type of hard unknots, and in fact, this is the smallest possible hard unknot, smallest possible, which need kind of more effort. You need first to increase complexity before you simplify down. Okay, so that is a nice example illustrating complexity, intuitive complexity of the task. So here is another task of the same kind. Is it trivial? No. What you see here. Is it possible to untangle this type of thing?
Very simple.
But still simple.
Yeah, you take a sword and you cut. That's all.
Yes.
Proteins are even more complicated.
It seems there is a hierarchy actually. You have a smaller one and another one. So is it that it is something two kind of concrete attached to each other? No.
Yeah, it is more complicated than concrete, but interestingly, it is also unknown. And also, kind of, if you look at the literature, it's probably the largest named unknot. So the largest named projection, it's called Haken-Gordian unknot. So using sword was very much appropriate here. So that is called unknot. And in fact, you can untangle it. Okay, so let me. No, I won't try it here. It will take a few dozens of steps. Wouldn't be possible, unfeasible. But these two examples, however lightweight they are, illustrate the important point. The problem of detecting non-triviality is highly non-trivial itself. From human perspective, but also from mathematical perspective, as some results I will mention later will show. And final set of examples is that is this trivial? Not. No, it's not trivial. It's again pretty obvious for humans to say so, because whatever you try, that doesn't help. It's always retains this mutual entanglement of all these threads. So yes, so this is non-trivial, and that is probably simplest, not probably, this is the simplest non-trivial knot known in mathematics. Now the question is, we would like to consider this algorithmic problem first from theoretical curiosity, given such a diagram in some appropriate way, how to decide efficiently whether it's trivial knot or not. And again, as you see here, there's some theoretical results and complexity of this task. Well, first of all, we need to make it precise. In a mathematical or computational problem, we need to talk about encodings. So somehow you need to present final description of this type of diagrams, but it could be done in many different ways, including famous Gauss codes. But then you would like to ask, can such a diagram be a diagram of a trivial knot? Can it be deformed without cutting into a trivial circle embedded in a three-dimensional space? It's decidable. It's known for more than 60 years now, but complexity is high. The task belongs both to classes of NP, non-deterministic polynomial, a co-NP, and it's open question, is it efficiently computable, or more precisely, can it be done in polynomial time? As computer scientists like to consider polynomial time as a precise concept of feasible computing. We will not try to approach this. Approach I'm talking today is not solving this type of theoretical problems. We're rather looking at efficient practical procedures given such a knot to decide whether it's trivial or not. Yes, we are not aiming to resolve this. We are rather looking for practically efficient procedures. There are, of course, several algorithms for this task. Earlier was proposed by Hacking, exactly at the time it was shown that the problem in principle is decidable, but that original algorithm was too complex, too highly exponential, so it's not practical to use it. And then I would mention two other algorithms. There are much more. One of them, algorithm proposed by Ivan Vinnikov, Moscow State University, an algorithm based on so-called monotone simplifications and provide fast recognition of unknots, but doesn't provide completeness in terms of it's not decision procedure. So sometimes if you're happy, you can simplify very fast. Sometimes it doesn't work, even for nodes, for example, with 70, maybe 100 crossings. Now, there is a much more known algorithm in a way that it embedded in a Regina system for computational topology. And for example, it's also provide efficient algorithm. And here it might be a little bit outdated, but it illustrates the efficiency of existing algorithms in a practical setup. For example, they show that any non-trivial nodes with 12 crossings or less could be recognized by under 5 minutes on using such algorithms. Yeah, so, but as I mentioned, there are some efficiency procedures, and for example, this monotone simplifications sometimes failed to work on relatively moderate size of nodes, a few hundreds, a few dozens of crossings. And so we are trying to explore what else is possible for the same task of unknot detection. And our approach, so that is originated in our paper with Andrew Fish. It's almost 12 years ago now. But our thinking was like that. So we have a knot, and there are many invariants or mathematical structures or values associated with knot which are invariant. They don't change once you change a knot in a allowed way, kind of continuously without introducing any cuts. So, and the idea was, okay, some of these invariants are very much algebraic in nature. Algebraic is an algebraic structure defined by some sort of equational law, similar to groups, for example. And so the property of these structures then indicate properties of underlying knot. So the idea was, okay, now we can translate the task about knots and task about algebraic structures. And that's what exactly we did 12 years ago and translated to some tasks about quite unorthodox invariants. If you are outside of knot theory, probably these look like a quite interesting structures, but within knot theory is pretty much well justified. But before I go there, I would like to now put very short crash course on introduction towards tools for automated reasoning. What is meant here and what we were using in this work. So by automated reasoning, we broadly understood this type of tools. And as you see, they refer effectively. There are some delays. Yes, here we are. So all this type of procedures and tools are referring to logic one way or another way. So you see somewhat transition. So we started with topology. We are going to translate in terms of algebra. We are going to solve algebraic questions with the help of logical tools, or automated reasoning tools. By automated reasoning, we understood this, at least these three categories. First, automated theorem proving. So we are talking here about classical first-order logic. You can formulate arbitrary axioms, you can formulate arbitrary goal, and then you can try to prove this goal fully automatically. There are very efficient tools. I even show one of them in a few minutes' time. Theorem disproving. It's slightly opposite task. You have, again, some theory specified, set of formulas, have target formula. You would like to show that it's not derivable, doesn't follow. How do you show it? You actually produce a countermodel, a structure on which all axioms are satisfied, a goal is not satisfied. And we are done. It's not derivable. So it's very efficient tools, and again, very useful for exploration of knots. And SAT solving, or more generally constraint solving, it's somewhat relative or model finding, but in a more refined way. And it's referring to finding satisfying assignments for propositional formulae, and typically very large size. So hundreds of thousands, sometimes of variables, and millions of clauses, and modern SAT solvers can solve such tasks. So this is a set of tools and methods we are going to use in our exploration of knotted structures. Now promised exotic algebraic structure, which turned out to be very useful in exploration of knot. It's so-called involutory quandle. It has only 3 axioms. And I would say probably the best way to get intuitive understanding of these axioms. So they correspond somehow, you try to organize some algebraic operations on the crossings of a knot. So if you can see the crossings like that, I'm showing now. Now you can see this as a given some algebraic operations. You're uncoming on the crossings. That is your first argument. Then you make a crossings and produce outgoing end from another side. You can consider as a kind of algebraic operation. And then x times x equals x is correspond exactly. You have a loop. You have x which cross itself and produce itself. So x times x equals x. It exactly means that loop you can just basically remove. It doesn't change anything. While other laws also correspond very natural topological moves or equivalence moves. For example, second axiom corresponds to the fact that if you are going to cross a thread by another thread, and then you are going back, so in fact, you can remove this part from there, and in fact, you are left with the original X. It doesn't make much difference, topological difference. If you go under the crossings, return back under the same segment, and then effectively you make a equivalent transformation topologically. But algebraically, you can actually write these axioms and treat these as algebraic structures. And the third one corresponds to so-called Reidemeister move 3, which I don't show here, but again, it's very natural equivalence law in knots. But now we switch our attention to algebra, to these laws. And now with each knot diagram, we can associate its own fundamental involutory quandle. So far we see generic axioms, like similar to generic axioms of groups or semi-groups, standard algebraic structures. But here, with each knot, you can associate unique fundamental quandle of this knot. And how do you do that? You actually consider labeling of all strands between essentially undercrossings. So there is some. So you label all strands A, B, and C, all these segments between undercrossing to undercrossing. So for example, C, if you look, it's a label this fragment from undercrossing to undercrossing. So all we need 3 letters only there. And now undercrossings, at each crossings, you have essentially meeting of 3 letters, label A, label B, label C, an example at the left. And that gives you very particular multiplication table. From that, we write the law A times B equals C in involutory quandles. That's why times looks like this triangle. But A times B equals C exactly correspond to this one. From this note, from this diagram, I would create 3 such equalities. A times B equals C, then C times A equals B, and so on. So it's very natural. There are 3 crossings, 3 labels. So you would write these axioms. And then what you get by all these axioms, fundamental involutory quandle associated with particular diagram. So in this case, was explained how to do it for trefoil. And that is very useful because these involutory quandles are powerful knot invariants. So essentially, they do not depend on the choice of equivalent diagram. You can move all the things in all different sides. You can move all fragments. You can pull them or push them. Algebraic structure associated will not change. This is invariant, and it was shown more than 40 years ago. It doesn't depend on the choice of diagram, but important property why we started with this type of structure is that its diagram is trivial, its quandle is trivial, if and only if actual knot is trivial. So now it gives you a way to use automated reasoning via this translation, topology to algebra, algebra to logic. How do you do it? Given a diagram, now you associate labels to each of the segments of this diagram. Out of this, you write down all particular multiplication table, particular for this diagram, with set of A times B equals C. If you need more letters, it's no problem. And now you actually converted it to the task of proving the triviality of this quandle as a task in a first-order logic. So we translate it into the prover and then run the prover and get the result if the knot is trivial. In similar way, you can test that knot is non-trivial. For that, you need to disprove the task. And that's the reason I mentioned these model finders. They will help us to disprove. Okay, that is some formality, how you do it. But that's exactly what I just said. Probably important thing is that to show that diagram correspond to a trivial quandle, you need to show that under all these laws, from this multiplication table plus algebraic laws for involutory quandles, you can derive equality of all generators, of all letters associated with the segments. That's how it works. Here it's a little bit formality from in a kind of standard logical syntax, but that's exactly what it says. Given a diagram, I write quickly a theory, and then I would try to test whether such thing is provable or not provable from a given theory. And now we can run, even in parallel, if you wish, two tasks. If you don't know in advance whether knot is trivial or not trivial, try to prove it and try to disprove it. Whichever comes first will give you the result. And now I couldn't resist temptation to actually show you how it actually works with a prover. I even prepared, okay, so it takes some time to switch to the prover. And first example I prepared is this culprit unknot, exactly the very first example, if you remember this, which you think that which you thought it's quite complicated to difficult. So here is okay, so what we see here, it's a prover, is a tool. So here is involutory quandle axioms, exactly 3 axioms we just discussed. So here below is a multiplication table for particular culprit unknot. And now what I'm going to prove out of this, that under this law, equality of all generators, of all these labels attached to the diagram, A1, A2, altogether there are 10 of them. And I'm going to prove it automatically using the power of generic automated reasoning. Notice, not specialized algorithm for not tasks. It's a generic reasoning. You can write any formula about anything you like here. And now I'm trying to prove it. And yeah, demonstration effect didn't work. I actually was able to prove. So as you see from a perspective of understanding what's going on, it's not entirely trivial, but it gives you full trace of reasoning why this exactly knot you saw as the first example is trivial. And here I would say interesting methodological thing. Eventually, even 12 years after it was invented, we would like to automate translation of this type of things into untangling rules on the diagrams. And so far, we were not able to do so. Because prover doesn't use just the trivial applications of the law, it also invents some lemmas or some generic statements which don't have direct topological meaning. So you need somehow to switch a perspective, and that's interesting, challenging tasks in this area. You can demonstrate the evidence that is trivial. You can probably extract some kind of geometric evidence, but that is beyond the point. You can do it very fast for this, and perhaps faster than most of the human do with these simple diagrams we saw as the first. And secondly, I would like to show disproving how it works. I commented wrong type of thing. Sorry. I need to comment culprit unknot. And uncomment trefoil knot. Trefoil knot, so it has a very simple multiplication table. And goal also, we need to change the goal. So trefoil knot is actually non-trivial. So that shouldn't work into proving. We can try. I can run prover, but we already know that shouldn't succeed. Run. Okay, so if I wouldn't know advanced, probably I would wait longer, but I know that it will never find. I would rather run this prover and try to find, and this prover found this counterexample. So what is this? So this is, if you like, algebraic structure, which operates on 3 elements, and satisfy all the law of involutory quandle. So here you see multiplication table as a squared. But in which this structure, A, B, and C all have different interpretations. so they couldn't be equal. The equality of them are not derivable from original axiom. So here is a counterexample. What more, it's linked to the next step of my presentation. You can think about it as a type of coloring of original diagram by 3 colors. How I would understand it? So you can see it. I had the 3 segments, A, B, and C. And I got 3 elements, 0, 1, 2. I would formally consider some coloring. So basically, I can take diagram. A, I will color with 0. B, I will color with 1. And C, I will color with 2. And then it gives me some coloring of a diagram which is consistent with the involutory quandle axioms. And this is a very important type of things, which kind of these countermodels can be seen as a natural coloring method. Okay, now I will stop the prover. So it will just demonstrate how it actually works in practice, and we'll return to the slide set. Take some time switching. Right. So before we go to the coloring, so that's what the illustration to this particular point. So we can apply proving or disproving to detect triviality or non-triviality of knots. Now I would say there are some other structures which are somewhat similar or close relatives of involutory quandles, and they are called, unsurprisingly, just quandles. So if you like, involutory quandles is a variance of quandle, and we will see just in a second on the screen. Okay. So the axiom of quandles, so this is definitions which include both quandles and involutory quandles. And probably exact symbolism is not important, except just explain what's the difference here. So for quandle, involutory quandle, we consider it crossing as an operation, like you're coming from a bottom in my demonstration, you intersect some segment, you produce new segment, like operation. But then if you are coming back, you multiplying the same segment by the same operation. So it doesn't feel involutory quandle directions, whether we are going, so when I'm crossing, I'm going over crossing segment going from left to right or right to left. If you do care about directions, if you consider not equivalence which take into account directions of then you need to consider more delicate structures which consider crossing in one direction and returning back actually correspond to different operations, somewhat inverse to each other. Because when crossing one direction, overcrossing goes from left to right, when you crossing back, overcrossing goes from right to left. There is a delicate difference, and for that you need a bit more complicated structure called quandles. So here are some axioms, but close relatives. And you also, given a diagram, you can write multiplication table for quandles exactly from a diagram as before. But here you take into account direction, like shown here, direction alpha does matter. And now you can consider coloring of such diagrams by fixed quandles. So if you have a quandle, you can have a coloring of diagrams. And here you even have it in real color, green, yellow. And if you have any candidate quandle, you can try to color it in this diagram respecting these laws. And referring to previous counterexample we found for trefoil, it was a candidate, it actually found candidate for coloring. Coloring, it means it's non-trivial, there are different colors. It satisfies all requirements of quandle or involutory quandle as previous case. And it means if you found non-trivial coloring, it means diagram non-trivial. Non-trivial coloring may be only for non-trivial knots. So you can take these coloring procedures, and then there is a general theorem which proposed another joint work with David Stanovsky. He somehow combined cleverly different results from different things, which effectively shown then all relations between all these type of things in quandles, in voluntary quandles, and especially for quandles, he has shown that if we have a non-trivial diagram, always there is a finite quandle by which it's colorable in a non-trivial way. It means this model finding procedures would work, eventually would work, and you will find if you apply regular counterexample finding procedures. Now, you can, though, this type of coloring reduce to the task of SAT solving. It means instead of first order logic I used so far, you can translate to propositional level, especially for fixed quandles. You can prepare some fixed quandles in advance and then run very efficient procedure, try to color one by one. And in this case, you can check non-triviality. So basically, we are talking a time in terms of 3 seconds horizontal diagram, and vertical x, it's a number of checked diagrams with 12 crossings family. So majority you can check under 3 seconds very fast. Check what fact? That it's non-trivial diagram. You give me a diagram. This SAT solving provided very fast, efficient procedure for this type of check.
I ask,
Yes?
can you find a crossing number in this way as well?
No. Crossing number is by far much more complex. Even though you may try, but it's,
Okay, fine.
I would say it's much less algebraically understood. You can actually manipulate somehow more mechanistically. You can encode this direct manipulation with Reidemeister moves in logical terms. And even at some point I'm going to do that, but I don't have much trust in this. This worked because we have very nice algebraic counterpart. So no much mechanics left of rewriting. You just have this equational laws. And that works very fast.
So do I understand correctly? What you do is essentially proving that the crossing number is 0.
Yeah, yes.
And if it's proving that it is not 0, but some finite number, is much more difficult because of the reasons you explained.
Yes. Yeah, but what we can do, though, we can extract a bit more. With my next step, I have not that much minutes left. But crossing number, no, it's very difficult task. Very challenging. I consider it's very challenging. Okay, so summary of results so far. So SAT-based procedures are fast. And in fact, the fractions of a second on benchmark families, and as compared with all known to us algorithms, is much, much faster. And that confirms that effectiveness of automated reasoning approach as a whole as a general purpose method for computational topology. But what else can we do in this style? We can not only detect unknot or non-trivial knot or non-trivial knot, but we can also define a type of a knot up to topological equivalence, up to isotopy, in the following way. You can actually, but for that you need to test coloring on a specific chosen set of quandles. And how do you do that? Well, in particular, we demonstrated in these papers that we can actually show concrete set of 15 quandles. It's sufficient. If you test coloring by all these 15 quandles, it would tell you exactly what type of a knot it is up to 10 crossings. So it distinguishes them all precisely. Now, if you increase the number of crossings up to 12, you need 17 quandles. And I would say previously known result was something 26 quandles. We reduced to 17. But more important, we have shown that practically it's much faster than testing 26 previously known quandles. So again, so what it is, so it's not complete procedure. It only works if you know somehow in advance or restrict your attention to knots with 12 crossings, this type of 12 crossings. But then we can test just 17 quandles for colorability very fast using such solving, and then get exact type of knot you are facing. Okay, so potential application to knot in proteins. Okay, so that's okay. It might be interesting, but so eventually we approached this probably several years ago, but our feeling was somehow people who are studying knots in proteins already have enough sufficiently efficient method to test them. And basically fighting for efficiency, like we can do for half a second what they already do for 5 seconds, probably is not something you can fight for. But still, it might be not is the case, and maybe that was a time when there is not that many proteins around, and maybe now that's one of the also reasons I would like to speak here. Maybe people would tell there still need a more efficient methods for detecting type of knotting structures in them. So that's the first observation. Second observation is for application to protein knots, you need somehow to deal with free ends. The classical knot theory dealt with knots as a closed circles embedded in 3D. So we need somehow to deal with loose ends. One thing, but another thing is perhaps we also need to deal not just a single circle embedded, but several interlinked circles, which effectively correspond to topological concept of links. One approach to deal with this would be, okay, that's I believe it's quite popular in the area, to consider some closing procedures. You have this knots in proteins, you have some proteins chains, you then apply some concept of closing. After that, you get mathematically nice closed knot, which you can then test by proposed methodology, proposed algorithm straight away. More fundamental approach is possible, is to change the mathematical model of knotted structures and then transfer the discussed methods there. What kind of other structures are possible here? Okay, so I will mention just 3 of them. First of all, links. I already mentioned it. Links is not one circle, but several circles. And actual methods based on quandles and voluntary quandles were developed actually for links, for general case. It should work. We just didn't test it as yet. But presumably it should work more or less without any changes. Another version of topological structure tangled is so-called tangles, which effectively, if you like, knots with the free ends. Or if you like, embedding of a family of intervals rather than knots interlinked in 3-dimensional space. So in this particular tangle illustration, I have only 2 ends, but you can consider more general tangles with n ends. So that for that, we also have initial work for this type of structure, applying automated reasoning, but done in different contexts of verification of quantum circuits. Mysterious, interesting on its own. But I believe if tangles are of interest in biology, could be transferred as well. Methods based on quandles and coloring and automated reasoning. And last generic concept is knotoids, which look like tangles, but with one additional property. So ends now, in tangles, all 3 ends belong to one area outside of boundaries of a main entangled area. So basically, topologically, on a projection, they are in a one area bounded by everything in this picture. While knotoids, you can have ends within areas of projection, and you are not allowed to move them out. For example, in this knotoid, you have this end, and you're not allowed to take this end out or this end inside. So that is extension of concept of tangles, and they may also find applications in analysis of protein. And in fact, there are already papers dealing with such modeling, and one of them including one of our collaborator, Neslihan Guguncu, who dealt with them traditional topological tasks. But now we propose to expand these AR methods for topological tasks for these structures, with the hope it would be more appropriate for modeling knots in proteins. And on this optimistic note, let me And thank you very much for attention. And are there any questions?
Thank you. As usual, I stop recording and